you know, what is DISC? Like, what does it matter? You know, what does it take to be an effective salesperson? And a formula that I like to use is this keys to sales effectiveness is this idea that when we can marry adaptability, this ability to adapt to the people that we are communicating with our, you know, technical knowledge, skills, and abilities, we execute, we close, we get better results. And so today the focus is really on that word adaptability and adapting to the people that we are communicating with. I always say to people, you know, it doesn't matter if you're negotiating, selling, leading, influencing. You need to be able to adapt in order to do each one of those skills effectively. What we're going to talk about today is truly the underpinnings of all of those skills. So adaptability is using a behavioral style in selling and in buying. If you are selling to everybody the exact same way, you are commonly losing out on opportunities. This is where I usually ask people to put up their hand, but we can't see you. How many times have you been in a conversation with someone who like is just talking at you? Like they're just talking at you and they're like, you're just thinking to yourself, like, when are they going to stop talking? Rick, put up your hand. What have you, I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to put you in the hot seat here, Rick. Like, what have you learned since doing DISC about, you know, what your common go-to is in a sales situation? Like, what do you do commonly? I can tell you, but I'm going to put you in the hot seat to see if you can remember it.
I talk too much.
You talk too much, but not only do you talk too much, what are you usually talking about?
Well, as I say, I am familiar with DISC, and I know I'm also on the high C spectrum. As such, facts-driven numbers and sort of data. So when I go to something that I try and explain, I guess I talk and it comes in more of a factual sort of perspective, as opposed to sales. Sometimes, you know, there is that component because it needs to be of value, but there's a lot of people that are sold on or appreciate.
I'm just even going to just stop. I'm going to stop.
I'm talking too much.
I'm going to stop you right now. One of the things that a C can do, a high C, and we'll describe what these are a little bit later. Karin, you already know, so this is great. But because you're so fact-based, you're so sort of fact-based, like give me the evidence, you can spew, I don't mean you specifically, but a C can spew sort of data and information and facts. And thinking that, you know, I'm going to prove my point and with some credibility here. But selling to someone like me, who's a high I, like my eyes are just going to glaze over. I'm just going to like tune out. Like, you are not speaking to my heart. I like, none of this stuff really matters to me. Like, it's important, but it just doesn't really light me up. And so this is the point here, is that our natural style is to just go in and sell to everybody the way we would want to be sold to. But what's so important to know is that that is really ineffective. And we need to slow down to really consider who we are talking to. So that's really what this quote is saying. People buy things for their reasons, not your reasons. They're not going to buy because this is the most logical sort of evidence-based like argument. They might buy because it's a dream, you know. Rick and I can quite often get into a fight over our home, and he'll be like, "Oh, the market's only going to get this much," and I'm like, "No, it's going to sell for way more than that, because it's like, it's something people can't get. It's so special. It's so unique." And so therein lies the difference between him and I. And I just share that to illustrate the point. He's going to say the market, the data will say that it's going to sell for this much. And I'm going to say, no, there's buyers out there that have always dreamed of living in a house like this, that are going to just like pay to be able to get into it. So am I right? Is he right? No. But it's just to illustrate how we buy for our own reasons, that we are motivated differently. So understanding a bit of this relationship selling model, which is based on DISC, really helps you build the trust and rapport that you need in order to partner with your client, in order to ensure that they're hearing what you're saying, that you're hearing what they're saying, so that together you can, close the deal or find the situation, the house that best suits them. So really selling is about creating that rapport and trust in the beginning, and having this understanding of how to know yourself to adapt to others is critical to that trust and rapport and in building that relationship. So gaining the skill of temporarily modifying your common practice to the person, the customer that you are talking to. So that if Rick were selling to me, he would be limiting the conversation on data, and he would be selling me the dream. He would be selling me the environment. He'd be selling, how great it's going to feel to live in this house or in this situation. So taking that moment, pausing for a second to adapt. Karen, can you, what do you know about adapting? Is this new information? Have you learned this already? Have you applied it? What can you tell us about sort of how, what you think about adapting in a sales situation?
Yes, that was something I learned quite early, to just mirror your client. I'm a high C, so you'd know everything about that trick, that it doesn't come that easy for me to get out of that comfort zone. But I've really learned to just adapt the client, and if just go to their level and just basically mirror them.
And in mirroring, do you think you do a good job of communicating enough, or getting quiet?
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah, mirroring is a really good skill.
It really does.
Yeah, no, mirroring is a really, really good skill in really just mimicking what they're doing and meeting them at their pace. But I think
it's just trying to relate to their personality and their style, and just tone of voice and body language and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a great skill. It's a great skill, but we can go deeper. We can go deeper with having information. So the golden practice is really knowing who I am. I'm a high I, Karen's a high C, Rick is a high C. Jim, if you can hear me, I would argue, I think you're a high S based on some of the conversations that we've had. And so we need to know ourselves first, and what that means for our communication preferences. I'll get into that in a second. But basically, a high C and D are going to like the facts, the data, give me the evidence to prove what you're saying. Whereas I's and S's love a feeling, love people, love a vision, an idea, just a sense of it's more of a feeling conversation, I would say. So the first step is really knowing ourselves, which we're going to get into in a second. The second is recognizing others, which we've been talking about here. And Karen has shared that she slows down to mirror, which is fantastic. But also knowing others and knowing what motivates and triggers others is really, really important. It goes just a little bit deeper. And then we adapt. And when we adapt, we are able to build that trust that I was talking about earlier that drives relationships. So what is DISC? So DISC is rooted in the work of William Moulton Marston. He was an American psychologist from the beginning of the 20th century. He wrote a book called The Emotions of Normal People. He's also sort of the founder, the forefather of the lie detector. Forefather's not the right word, but the inventor of the lie detector test. He also wrote Wonder Woman. So super interesting person there that was able to sort of identify different key behavioral attributes of human beings. It is basically a universal language of how we do what we do. Do we like to move fast? Do we like to move slow? Do we love people? Do we love tasks? So it's that how, it's observable behavior that we can see in people that really helps us to understand who we are talking to, which is handy. You just need to learn the language. So what we're seeing more and more in like popular media is this idea of disc showing up. You know, this is the Big Bang Theory, and here the characters each represent all of these different behavioral styles, but you can see it in really any popular media that you look at. I shared yesterday that I was reading a Harvard Business Review article about sort of getting what you want in business. And this article basically just identified how to negotiate with 4 different behavioral attributes in their way. And under all of that, it was their own language, but under all of that, there was DISC. It was DISC. It was all talking about DISC. So once you really start to know it and apply it, you start to see it more and more. And this helps us, like I said, not just in sales, but in our marital relationships, in our like raising of children, in our friendships. It's pretty important information. So, Karen, what do you know about being a high C? What do you know about that? What can you remember?
Facts. It's all about the figures and the numbers.
Yes.
And definitely attention to detail.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Basically
Rick,
that.
anything else you want to add to that?
Risk averse, compliant, takes time to make decisions. I know it drives you crazy. Carol will be like, oh yeah, we should just go out and buy this thing. And then I'm like, hang on, let me just research the best option, where we can get it from, how long it's gonna take. And she's like, just buy it. Just get it.
Let's just get it.
So yeah, those are the things.
Yeah. What do you guys see? So tell me, like, how do you know that you're selling to a high D, Rick? Like in real estate, how do you commonly know that you're selling to a high D?
We're kind of dealing with that right now. Email responses are short. They're straight to the point. There's no detail on it, which I'm like, well, what does he really mean? Moves fast. Kind of, if it's not the right fit, moves on to the next one straight away. Yeah, talks in a confident way, as if it's their way or no other way. Georgia.
Yeah. Oh, I can see what our little one just interrupted, Rick. So yeah, so to Rick's point, the high Ds like to move fast. They like to attack problems and challenges. They just want to get results, get things done. Lower Ds are reflective. You know, you commonly see with a high C, a low D, but it's not unheard of that you will see a DC combination in people. They can be very hard to read, but I won't get into that. High I's, I'm a high I. We love people. We love big ideas. We love being spontaneous. Low I, we trust easily. Low I's don't, you have to earn their trust. They're much more realistic, much more practical. They might, you know, not necessarily, they might be more of a wallflower in the room. They want to observe more than just participate. High S likes a steady pace, likes to finish, follow through, get things done. Low S is driving. They like a lot of balls in the air, commonly like a lot of chaos. High C is that compliant, like you two know. They will research everything. They will ask a lot of questions, and they will take their time. Karen, you're laughing here. What just popped for you?
A lot of questions. Definitely a lot of questions. I need to know where we're going, at what exact time, how long it will take to get there, what we'll be eating on our way, on the way back, where we're going to stop. I want to know everything up front.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You're bang on, you know, and I always say like a high C won't get started unless they have all that information. Whereas
exactly.
An I and a D will be like, we'll figure it out. What are you worried about? Like, And a low C is pioneering. You know, we're not afraid to take risks. We think their rules are meant to be broken. So who do you guys think is probably the hardest person for you to sell to or work with? Who on here do you think is the hardest person for you to work with?
I think maybe the low I.
A low I? How come?
Because they're not really trusting.
Yeah. Rick, who do you think?
So. I don't know.
Rick, who do you think would be hard for you to sell to?
Yeah, it's a good question. Kind of dealing with a sort of a few at the same time, two different styles of clients. And on the one hand, because of my data, facts, and knowledge, as long as I can be concise and to the point to the high D, it's all there. And he's like, yeah, great, done. I agree with it. Let's do it. And I'm like, great, did a deal without doing too much. Whereas working with another high I, it's like similar to me, which is good because I understand them and I understand what they need, but at the same time, it's just so much effort because it takes so long to get them across the finish line. So I guess, yeah, in terms of as long as I'm prepared for the high D with the information that they need, then I think that's
and we are.
Yeah. Technically.
Yeah, so yes, like good observation there. A high D is going to want you to be brief, be bold, and be gone. So as long as you can be succinct with your facts and figures, you guys will get along all day long. And as long as you can be responsive quickly, like in a timely manner, they send something to you, they want to have an answer within 24 hours, not let me research it for 3 days and get back to you. I practice I have another client that's a high C, Karen, and whenever I work with him, I'm like, okay, what are we remembering today? And he says, wait. And I'm like, yes. What does wait mean? It means, why am I talking? So I have noticed that high C's have a tendency. I mean, I'm an I talk a lot too. I need to practice this as well. But high C's have a tendency to talk a lot. So practicing, wait, why am I talking? Keep it succinct.
Eye opener.
Yes, is very, very powerful. So a high D is, you know, both good and bad. I would say, to Rick's point, a high I is also pretty tricky for you guys. I'm going to stop sharing because I want to pull up another document here. Just to see if I can. Hold on one second. Just to show you guys some like real tips and tricks about your style and understanding how to adapt a little bit more realistically. So just give me a second to share this other side here. Here we go. Share screen. Here we go. So this is, I can send this to you. Are you guys looking at the behavioral selling skills, high D salesperson?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I can send you this Google link, but where the meat, I mean, this in here gives some really good indication of how easy it is to sell to different people. But where I'm going to take us right now is to you guys, because we might as well. So behavioral selling skills of a high C. So characteristic of a high C, you have all the data, you can overuse it. You might need a bit more enthusiasm. You may have trouble selling products below your own standards because you have very high standards. You are well organized, always prepared, consistent, but have that tendency to over-explain that we talked about. So if you're a high C selling to a high D, you know, this little table here, you know, of the 4 says that D is tricky. So remember
what's BSM?
That's a good question. I have to go back up here. It's like, has to do with how easy it is for you to sell to them. See, this is like me.
Behavioral, go up. Behavioral, no, that's not it.
Behavioral selling, I'm not sure. It's just a rating of how easy it is for you to sell to that person. I can
behavioral style metric.
Modification. I can look into it and get back to you. Like, that's an example of me being like, I don't know, who cares? Like, let's move on.
And me being like, there's a 1 next to it means it's excellent, but why is it excellent?
Okay, well, I can explain that. So here we go. No, that's an S. So a C.
There.
Yeah. So, you know, like if you don't adapt by being succinct, selling to a D is hard, because you could give them too much data, you could talk too much, you're not being brief. So that's why it's getting a rating of 4 as poor, that it's a harder person for you to sell to. Next would be that I. That's what I thought. It would be hard for you to sell to an I, someone like me, because we're looking for the experience. We really don't care that much about your data. You know, I was saying to us before, that I'm saying our house will sell above, you know, what market value is, because it's very unique. It's a really unique experience. So that's the difference there. So make sure that you listen to them when they talk, like really make sure that you listen. You know, mirroring here, Karin, would be really good. Mirroring their enthusiasm for an idea or a dream that they have. Just let them be expressive and get excited with them, you know, dream with them. They care more about the experience and people and relationships than really anything else. So they would be tricky for you to sell to. And S, and it would be easy for you. So S is that steady. It's people that move a little bit slower. They like to follow through and finish. They do like people, but they also like sort of security. So if you are sort of showing them that you've got the facts and the figures, that you've thought things through well like them, then they're going to relate to that. S's and C's do a really good job of thinking things through. D's and I's do a really good job of moving quickly and getting things done. Doesn't always mean we've really considered all of the different, like, you know, holes in a plan, if you will. So an S will really be a good fit to sell to, and they will trust you because of the credibility that you bring through talking about your facts and figures. And then obviously a C, selling to another C, would be really easy for you as well. You know, it takes one to know one. The only problem where I think you could run, like the only place where I think you could run into a problem, and this came up yesterday in a session, is that what was said yesterday is that, like, someone was like, I stop listening if they're not as smart as me. So if you're selling to another C and they think that they're smarter than you, you might need to just like ask them a few more questions. That was stated yesterday. I can't speak from experience. Rick, like, can either of you talk about that? Like, if someone's selling to you and they've got the information, but it just doesn't quite meet the mark, do you discount them?
No, I think it boils down to that thing that you said about credibility. So if you're selling to a high C and you have that credibility, then it adds value and they will listen. If that person thinks they're smarter than you, then likely the credibility side may not be there.
Right.
Based on that.
Right. So you have to prove your credibility up front when selling to another high C.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. How would you say that you do that now? Like, how would you say, like, have you ever been in a situation where you're like, yeah, I'm talking to another C here?
Not initially, but later on, like establish that and then realize that when communicating, everything just actually needs to be on a piece of paper in numbers outlined almost in a spreadsheet to say, this is why I've come to my conclusion based on these facts. Here it is for you to see the answer and dive deeper to make your own decision, but this is why I came to where I was.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to shift gears here a little bit because we've talked about, who you would sell well to and where there might be like tension, or it might be a bit tricky because of different behavioral profiles. And I want to really focus on actually, like, how do you start like assessing who you're talking to? That is a common question that comes up. how do I know, like, if I've just met a prospect or I've just gotten this information online, how do I know who I'm talking to? Because, you know, we're doing a lot more, I don't know about you, Karin, but Rick's doing a lot more online SEO type sales. Can you, like, Karin, are you doing anything like that?
No, not at all.
Not at all. Yeah.
No.
I think it's a little different in South Africa because you
We're
don't
not
have an
there
agent
yet,
representing
really.
a buyer and a seller.
Yeah.
So whereas here I can pick up the majority of my online leads are all buyers because they're searching for a property. I capture their information of what the property they're looking for, establish what they're trying to find, and be like, here, I can help with that. So it's more virtually done. And try reach out if they've leaving a phone number, but most times it's over an email or a message. And yeah.
And so
Yes,
what, I'm sorry.
basically we are, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Karin. I want to know why it's
I'll
not.
wait. I'll wait.
No, go ahead.
You'll wait. Why
No,
am I?
no, I'm just joking. We represent the seller, so and it's basically it's mostly just phone calls. So no, I'm not nearly as into the, especially this what you're doing now. It's all new to me, the Zoom and stuff.
The technology side of things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just clarify for me, Rick, like what difference does it make if you're representing both buyers and sellers? Like they could still be picking up buyers if maybe they don't have a house to sell. Like what? I don't understand.
Yeah, so and Karin can maybe explain a little bit further, but in South Africa, you often have what's called a sole mandate, where you're the listing agent and you can bring the buyer. So if there's another buyer from another agent, it doesn't always work out. It's like it's in your interest to bring the buyer yourself. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Karin, which...
No. Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so very rarely will you represent a buyer that you're not already representing the sale. Yes,
we do not. There's nothing. No, we don't represent only the buyer either. We do not get buyer's mandates. It's very, very unlikely that we will get someone that says, "I'm in the market for buying something. Find me a house." It does happen, but not that frequently. We represent the seller and we list their property. We really market their property and attract the buyers.
So I guess
they will be drawn to that specific property.
On a separate topic, just trying to understand that, Karin, what happens if you represent the seller and they've sold and now they want to buy a property? So they're technically your client because you've helped them sell their home. And while you're trying to find a home, you know, now you're wanting to help them and represent them. But now do they go and buy with another agent who's selling that, or who's the listing agent on a different property?
Oh, yes, that happens all the time. It happens all the time. So we don't get something, there's nothing.
Oh, dropped there.
Loyalty there.
Wow.
Buyers
It's completely opposite. So
there's no loyalty.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
We do not even spend time on a buyer, really, because they're just all over the place. So there are so many properties. We rather stick to our sellers and we get more listings and work with sellers because the buyers are open to, they don't give anyone a mandate. There's nothing like that. There's nothing.
And in full transparency, when I've now the last year or so worked with the 5 families that I've helped buy homes here, that's been a bit of a challenge where they, you know, have just gone straight to listing agents to try and find homes. And I'm like, no, I'm helping you here. This is how it works here. You can't go to the agent because he's just going to tell you, I can't represent you. I can't do anything. So I've had to kind of explain that. But I've always wondered where if you have a good friend and you sell their home, I know you're going to help them buy a house, but they're just going to go to somebody else. And I'm like, well, where's the representation or help or assistance? But anyway, different topic, different time.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I just want to, I mean, part of the question and why I'm asking is like, how do we frame this? How do we frame up the sales situation? So it's really about, you know, I think landing a prospective seller. How do you put your best face forward to land a prospective seller? And now use this information like in like do you guys do listing presentations, Karin?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so use this information in your listing presentations, and
I will definitely
share some more information and some slides here. But what I might want to get you guys to do, we've sort of highlighted high level, you know, like who is easy for me to sell to, who's hard. Now in your own mind, like write down who is someone that like either in the past that you've worked with that was really tricky, or maybe someone now. You don't have to share it. I just want, this is work for you to do now. Write down who is a tricky customer that you are working with right now.
current seller. Hmm.
And then once you've captured that, take a look at, you know, this slide here. Am I showing? I'm not showing a slide, am I?
No.
Take a look at this slide here. This is like a really basic version of how to assess your client. So are they a task-oriented, data-oriented individual, or are they a people-oriented individual? So we've got task on the, let's call it the north side, and people on the south side. And we've got outgoing individuals on the right, so your extroverts, balanced out with your introverts on the left, the C's and the S's. So D's and I's are outgoing, they like to move fast. C's and S's are a little bit more methodical. They follow through. I say move slower, but I mean it in a very positive way. They follow through. Task oriented, you know, data oriented versus people. So you don't share with me who the person is, but were you able to sort of capture, Rick, who that, like what that profile is, what their primary style is?
Yeah, I'm just kind of going through my list, and predominantly, as I said, this is with buyers.
Yeah.
We're in a really strong seller's market, so selling is just normally pretty quickly. But for current people and buyers, and I narrowed it down for people that have taken a really long time and we haven't really made progress. Probably more on the reserved, quiet, take time, because they've taken a long time to kind of move forward and make a decision.
So what are we putting them at?
Well, it would be more compliant and steady, I guess.
Okay, so either a C or an S. Karen,
Yeah.
what did you come up with as it relates to your tricky customer?
I kind of think of a tricky customer, tricky buyers. Oh, many of those, but that is at least there's one guy.
Okay.
This is one person that is always and I actually, what I'm doing wrong here, this guy always he wants to challenge me and my real estate knowledge.
Keep going.
Why is it? He wants to sound as if he knows more about the industry than I do, and then I will challenge him right back.
So what do you think he is?
I would say maybe a D. I'd say D. I don't know, maybe a D. I'm not so familiar with the
Does he talk
profile type.
fast or slow?
I know it's quite fast.
Yeah. He could either be a D or a C. My instinct when you said that was a C. And it went back to that argument that I made earlier saying like, it should be easy for you to sell to another C, but unless the person thinks that they know more than you. So
yeah, but it is the seller. He's the seller. So I cannot, if I report back on the month's activities, then he's I don't know. I think he's asking more than what's necessary, and I do have all the answers for him. Always, as you know, or as you would know, I would be prepared.
yeah,
And he's always challenging me.
yeah.
So
Well,
it's very irritating. It's very irritating because I know I'm doing a very good job.
It's your zone of genius. It's who you are, right? So he's like sort of getting you at like what you're the best at.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I mean, I I'm going to give you a little bit more information here. And as I keep talking, maybe keep listening for, is this guy a C or a D? So Jim, welcome back. Welcome back. We've just been talking about behavioral profiles, who are easy profiles for you to sell to, who are tricky profiles for you to sell to. I had them identify a tricky customer and guess which one of these people they were, which behavioral profile they were. So I'm just going to keep going here. What I want you to do, I'm just going to quickly tell you. So a D is someone that's dominant, that loves problems and challenges, move quickly, they like data, they like tasks. That's what you're seeing in the top right-hand side there. And
Okay.
I is someone like me who loves people, loves to talk, loves big ideas. We move fast, we're people oriented. Data, facts, and figures, like not that important to me in the initial stages. S is about pace. They like people too, but commonly they hold their cards a little closer to their chest. Like I said, based on our conversation that I had with you, I think you are an S. Like you are definitely a people person, but you might be an SI, but I do think like you will hold your cards a little closer to your chest.
Okay.
And then a C is compliant. So Rick and Karen are both C's. So they believe in following policies and procedures set by others. There's a way that we are meant to do this. I want to know
Right.
everything. What's the plan? Where are we going? What are we eating along the way? Where will we stop? They want to know it all. So that's just a quick, I will give you more information for you to look at later. But what I want to help Rick and Karen with right now is like, how do we really assess these people? So it's important sort of in our, let's call it listing presentations to have this information and know. It's important in our buyer situations to have this information to know how to like move people along, if you will, in a way that makes sense for them. So this is like heavy on content, what I'm about to show you. So I challenge you, like choose one profile and be like, okay, I want to get to know this one person better and listen, like pay attention to a couple of nuggets that you're like, huh, I could use that information in my next listing presentation. So talking to a high D, be specific, be brief, be bold, stick to business, come with a well-organized package. You know, Jim, what we were saying with Rick, and I'm not going to throw Karen in here for sure, but like they will have a prepared case, but they will have so much information that they can sometimes spew information. So be brief, be bold, be gone with a D. Things that will annoy a D is like not having a clear next step, appearing disorganized, talking about things that are completely irrelevant to the topic. Okay, so those are a couple key pointers. What you will see, how you will see a D and words that work with a D. They're commonly an entrepreneur. I work with a lot of Ds in my business, a lot of Ds. They love a lot of like balls in the air. They love just crushing deals, getting things done, moving fast. Their emails are like 3 words. You know, they're that typical alpha personality. They can have a bit of an anger side to them because ultimately they don't want to waste time. So in your listing presentations, like we want to talk about success. We want to talk about speed. You know, we're going to get this done. It's going to be awesome. You know, just really giving them as much power and control as possible. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Giving them options is really important, but really sort of catering to their, let's call it ego in a way. Next, we have adapting to an I, so someone like me. So provide a warm and friendly environment. Spend a couple minutes like, hey, how are you? What's going on? How's your family? Like asking those questions. If you don't know if a person's a D and an I in the beginning, you'll know in the first 30 seconds. Like you'll know if that person's going, then you know you're talking to a D and you need to rein in the small chat. So don't give me a lot of details or follow up with what we talked about in writing. I think that's where Rick and Karen would do a really good job. Like you have the details, you know you're talking to an I, just send them to me on the back end. Ask feeling questions like what's your dream? What's the vision you have for your family? What's the environment that you want to create? Like what have you always dreamt of from a house? Like don't talk about stats and things like that, but just like help them see the future. Ask them future-oriented questions that relate to ideas and feelings. Don't be too controlling. Don't talk too much. Let them talk. Ask a lot of questions and don't overload them with facts and figures. So friendly people, they'll be happy to see you. They'll want to ask you a lot of questions about yourself. We like new things, innovative things. Yeah, here's a few words that work. So how you adapt them in your listing presentations, you know, you make you. I don't know, the words that work. Yeah, we'll do a great job of putting your house out there for the world to see. Like, let's put the best face forward that we can on your house. Like, talk about the house and sort of what it represents in the brand and the community. I think that is probably how I would adapt a listing presentation to an I. So an S is they as well want to take that time in the beginning to get to know you with a bit of a break the ice question, like, how are you? How's the family? You might change like your tone. Like for me, like come down. Like if I should slow down a little bit, not be so energetic, not be so in their face, slow things down. But really like give them options and time to think. An S can be frustrating, well, to me, and a D, simply because S's like that time to think. So if you can see someone is sort of like taking in what you're saying, but not necessarily responding, then be like, no problem, let's meet next week to talk about this and what you're thinking about, or let's meet in 48 hours. If you can see that you're talking to an S, give them time to think, give them time to think things through. Don't just rush into the next step like you would a D. And a D is going to be like, okay, what's the next step? An S is probably going to need another meeting before you talk about what the next step is. So they can be quiet, but they're friendly. They need that trust in you. They don't like unproven, untraditional methods. So if you're rolling in there like, hey, we're going to do this aerial drone footage thing, you know, and they're maybe even an older person, that might not necessarily sell to them. So just go on like proven methods, traditional concepts. They are seeking out harmony in relationships. Security is really important to them. Change is hard. Change is hard. This might be that client that is like, come on, like what is going on? Why is it taking you so long? Because change and security and literally like change of their home, their dwelling is maybe one of the hardest things that they will ever have to face in their lives because it's disrupting their need for security. That's really important here, you guys. Jim, if we had more time, I would probably want to put the spotlight on you and say, what do you think? But we don't. So I'm just going to unfortunately have to rush through it because I want to get to this C, which is Karen and Rick. So as we know, they want you to come prepared. Like they'll probably have done more reading. Like if Jim, you and I are doing this listing presentation, they will probably have like already read all the market stats. They will have done all the research. They will know a lot of things. They will have a binder already when you walk in there. They will have a folder. So come ready with your folder, come ready to make your case and be able to speak logically to the facts and figures of the market. You know, they would look at someone like me and say like, what's she doing with her hands? Like tone down those hands, you know? They just like steady, organized, you know, to the point as well. They don't want you to be disorganized or messy or unrealistic with deadlines. I think they will call BS on a situation pretty quickly if they see that someone's trying to like oversell them, which is something an I would probably try and do. So they can be suspicious, does not readily make product, service, or changes. Again, someone that's, you know, a little adverse to change. It's like in an initial situation, they might not be that talkative, but my experience is C's can be very talkative when they're comfortable. But that initial sort of prospecting situation, they will be more of an introvert. They will not be really wowed by innovation either. So just be careful unless it's proven technology that they can relate to. So again, quality, safety, and that time to think, and data to back up sort of what you're talking to them about, what they're saying. So I'm going to send you this. I've got tons of content for you. You know, you can sort of take from it what you need, take from it what you don't need. You know, I think the most important thing to consider, really most important thing to consider is like slowing down in the beginning to consider, who are you talking to? Who am I and who am I talking to? And what does that mean for our makeup with each other? Like, what does that mean for our interaction? And how do I prepare in advance for that interaction? Jim, in the email, Karen, I'm not sure if you got it, but if you didn't get it, let me know. But I included a little cheat sheet. Yeah, that's perfect, Rick. I have these little cheat sheets for all my clients that I share with them, that they keep it on your desk, keep it in your briefcase, helps you really understand what's important to this person. How do I like keep this safe space for this person, make sure they feel comfortable about this change or this thing that's coming up, so that you can really connect, because that's what this is all about, is about building the trust that you need to get the deal done.
Is that the color-coded okay, yeah, got that. Yeah.
So key takeaways: really get to know yourself, get to know your strengths, get to know your limitations. We all have them. Slow down to pay attention to who you're talking to. Really start getting to know these different behavioral profiles. Pay attention to them in popular media, and also like in literature. I'm going to share with you this Harvard Business article that Karen speaks exactly to what you're talking about. Like, when you're talking to a know-it-all, don't fight a know-it-all with a know-it-all. Like, keep asking them questions. You start seeing these behavioral profiles popping up more and more, because at the end of the day, it's about building that relationship, creating that trust so that they are your forever client. Questions, comments, what do you guys think? What's going on in your brain so far? I can stay on for another 20 minutes. If you guys have to pop off, no problem. But this is where I like to just have some chat and sort of see what's sticking for you guys.
How long does it take you to kind of determine what category in the DISC someone falls into?
I mean, for me, because I've been working with it for a little longer, I would say pretty quickly. There's a couple of people that have eluded me over the years, for sure. But commonly, like, once you see that slide that I show you, do they move fast? Do they move slow? Do they, you know, are they people oriented? Like, are they an introvert? Are they an extrovert? Like that, you know, usually in the first couple of minutes, if you can orient yourself with a few questions, you can make an assessment.
Okay.
Yeah. What did you think of my assessment of you as an S?
I'm just reading slow pace, people oriented. Yeah, pretty good assessment. Yeah, pretty good assessment, I would say. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Karen, what's popping for you?
Wait.
Wait.
I know I can talk too much. I know that.
Yeah.
Especially if I've got all the detail, then I will just blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah it all out. So I'll just wait.
Yeah, good. Good.
So I don't have to know everything.
But based on that, because I can relate, so how do you catch yourself when you are talking too much?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, how do you get out of it? Because I feel like once I get going, I can just keep going. And it's only on a topic that I know a lot about. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it.
Yes, yes. It's not asking or telling you about the weather. I know what I'm telling you. You should listen. You need to hear this.
So,
but I can see they lose their interest in what I'm trying to say. It's too much information. I am well prepared, and I've done. I went to a lot of trouble to get all the details there for them, and I want to share it with them, but I can see it's not their thing. So, and quiet away.
Jim, what would you do? Any recommendations for Rick when he finds himself talking too much?
Yeah, I do the same. I catch myself from time to time. I usually can judge by the people I'm talking to's facial expression if they're getting kind of bored or there's some signs that you see, and I just kind of catch myself when I'm doing that. And I guess I'm just good at reading other people's facial reactions, and but if you can't catch those, then yeah, I'm not too sure what other tools to stop yourself if you're not really sure that you're doing it.
So a golden rule that like was taught to me, I mean, years ago, both my parents are in sales. I lived and breathed that my whole life, but the golden rule is whoever is talking the most doesn't have the power. So the person that is talking the least has the most power. So while you might have all these facts and figures that you want to share, the most important thing is asking them, what's important to you? What do you want to get out of here? What do you need to know? So you can start down this road, and I do it too, but when you start seeing people eyes glazing over, checking out, stop yourself and be like, hey, let's pause here for a second. What have I just said to you that's important, that's meaningful, that is relevant? Nothing. Okay, so what should we talk about today? What do we want to get out of today? What do you need to learn today? So quickly stopping and shifting gears to ask them about anything that you've just talked about, to then really get to the heart of like what's important to them, what's relevant to them, what's most important. So switching from like being the deliverer with all the information to being the curious like investigator, asking quickly and changing the question, getting them.
Do you have specific or questions that you've found have worked well, A, in identifying what sort of person it is, or B, yeah, well, I guess just identifying the person. So the type of questions you can ask where you receive a response and you're like, okay, that's my understanding now that they're probably going to be more in that sort of category. Therefore, I should be asking the set of questions to them.
I think spending that time up front to just say, how are you? How was your weekend? And if you get the like, yeah, it was good, or like they're holding their cards close to their chest, then that's a good indicator. You know, are they going to move through a bit of an a rapport building situation pretty quickly? That would be something that I pay attention to. Or if they just start spewing out, oh, you know, this thing happened on the weekend and kids and then blah, blah, blah. Like, then you know you're talking to an I or an S. So just spending a couple of minutes at the beginning. So how was your weekend? Another question I like to ask people is like, you know, what are you hoping to get out of this conversation today? And if they're clear, they're concise, they're to the point, then it's probably a D. I will find I can ask that question of a C and they'll spin. They'll say a lot of different things. So that's another thing. So what do you want to get out of this conversation? So you can keep the agenda their conversation and make sure you hit on their conversation. And then always keep in mind the back of your head, like, what does this person want? Like, why are we here? What does this person want? And what could get in the way of them getting what they want? So listening for that, like what could be like getting in the way of getting the want? So framing that up in the beginning of why are we here? What do you want to get out of here? What's worked in the past? What hasn't? And what do we want to get to is a good place to start. What are you thinking, Rick? I can see the head.
I'm reading here. And on your do's under steadiness, it was just saying ask how questions, which draws out opinions. Yeah, so for me, it's you know, I struggle with asking questions. I do. Like I'm not the one to ask the questions. I prefer to state questions or facts. So that's, you know, that's where I need to improve on, as you said, instead of selling to the same 25% and trying to expand that. So it's kind of
So what could be some like questions that you could think of that would be important in like a listing sales presentation, or like, what do you think are some questions that you should always have in your toolkit?
Well, I mean, if you're working with sellers or going for a listing, it would be, thanks for coming in. Well, I guess it's determining why they're looking to sell. Is it to take advantage of the market, or is it to downsize, or is it to, there's maybe family circumstances that have resulted in a sale. And then I guess on the buyer side, there's buying for value, the financial components of it. Is this a good investment versus, does this fit my family needs? I'm close to the schools. Is it going to meet my view of the water? I don't mind what it costs, sort of. So it's asking those. Well, that's the end result, but how do I ask those questions, I guess, is figuring out the priorities for that person.
Yeah, and I think some priorities are going to be financial based, and some are going to be, which is going to appeal to a D and a C, and some are going to be more like dream based, So I think you're on the right track there with those questions. I think you just need to really be intentional. It comes back to this preparation of what are like my standard go-to that are going to pull out DI personalities, and they're going to pull out SC personalities. Like financial, like locations, market stats, like all of that speaks more to a DC. Schools, experience, my neighbors is going to speak more to an IS.
And depending on their answer will depend on what they, like if you ask what's important to you in a home, and if they respond neighborhood, family, everything, then you're like, okay, that's DI. If they're like, oh, it needs to be on a good street, yeah.
Yeah, if they're talking resale value, if they're talking numbers, yada, yada, then it's a DC. Market stats, like price per square foot. Price per square foot is totally a DC. I don't even know what size our house is. People ask me that all the time. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't care. Love my house. But I do think if you can have a few, like should be your homework then, like have a few questions in your toolkit to help you frame that person up front and figure out, like, I think exactly what you just articulated to me, but now you're listening for a D, an I, an S, or a C's answer to those questions. I was just poking around in the back to see if I had some questions for you ready to go, but I just think it's something that you have to start crafting for yourself so that it's in your own language. Does that make sense? Jim, do you sort of have like your go-to questions for any prospect meeting?
Pretty much. Yeah, it just kind of comes just from experience. And so, yeah, I just have the set kind of go-to questions. Usually, what are you looking for? What's important to you? Those type of things. And often they won't know sometimes what they're really after. And so that's where I kind of will guide them to the things that, I kind of think may be important to them, and it kind of turns on a light switch sometimes. And so a little bit of both. And I guess it's all depending on the type of person. Some people know exactly what they want. Some people don't really know. And so you're quickly kind of getting an idea for the client and who they are, and accommodating the questions based on who you think they are.
Yeah.
I guess asking that question, which one's more important to you in a home, the square footage or the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Right.
And if they say, oh yeah, I really need the space, then you're like, okay, that's kind of more this person. Or if it's no, I really need the community and the families and the kids, and you kind of.
That's right.
That's right. Karen, anything else to add to the conversation?
No, I really look so much forward to this, and thank you so much for this.
Oh, my pleasure. It's nice. We were supposed to have a few more bodies on here, but I always know like people's worlds are moving so quickly that it's tough. But in some ways it's nicer that it's a smaller group because we can really like laser in the conversation to you guys. Any sort of questions for me before we sort of sign off? Jim, anything else?
Not really. More so just kind of taking a closer look at the color coded disc here and getting a better understanding of it. But other than that, it's been very informative. So thank you.
Well, thanks for showing up.